the course of the first 5 years of my career, I was living and working in rural Africa.
Some announcements drift through the news cycle unnoticed. And then there are announcements that thunder across a continent, impossible to ignore. On September 8, 2025, Mozambique declared to the world that it had secured World Bank backing for a $6 billion hydroelectric giant, the Mfandankua project, the largest dam scheme Southern Africa has seen in half a century. For a region often described as fragile, cash-strapped, and politically unstable, Mozambique stepped forward with a headline too powerful to dismiss. "We are building power on our own river, on our own terms." The numbers are seismic. 1,500 megawatts of generation capacity scheduled for 2031. A $6 billion price tag. A location just 60 kilometers downstream from Cahora Bassa, the iconic dam that has defined Mozambique's energy identity since the 1970s. The Zambezi River, long a symbol of untapped potential, will once again shape the nation's destiny. This was not vague promise-making. These were measurable steps that forced regional neighbors and global players alike to redraw their energy maps. The drama of the announcement was deliberate. President Daniel Chapo, still shadowed by disputes over his 2024 election win, raised his fist before jubilant crowds. For him, Mfandankua was more than infrastructure, it was legitimacy in concrete and steel. A political anchor too massive to be dismissed as rhetoric. And standing at his side was World Bank President Ajay Bunga, signaling to Mozambicans and to the world that this was no isolated dream. This was recognition that Mozambique had entered the league of serious energy powers. But beneath the ceremony, the project's meaning stretched far wider. Southern Africa is crippled by a deficit of nearly 10,000 megawatts. Industries stall. Cities black out. Growth suffocates. By launching Mfandankua, Mozambique positioned itself as a regional anchor. South Africa, plagued by years of rolling blackouts, and Zimbabwe, desperate to stabilize its grid, suddenly had to look north to Maputo for survival. What was once a peripheral state had placed itself at the center, holding the keys to regional stability. Analysts in Washington and Brussels were forced to swallow the reality. A country long defined by poverty statistics had just changed the balance of power in Southern Africa. The irony was sharp. While Western nations redirected development budgets into defense spending and domestic crises, Mozambique channeled global capital into a project that promised not handouts, but leverage. This was the difference between aid and ambition. Yet what makes this moment historic is not just the size of the project but its timing. Mozambique is a country scarred by civil war, battered by insurgencies in the north, and slowed by years of economic stagnation. And yet, here it was, announcing the biggest infrastructure venture in a generation. The message was unmistakable. Yes, we have been broken before, but today we build something that cannot be ignored. This is not just about turbines and contracts. It is about identity. Mozambique is telling its citizens, its neighbors, and the wider world, we are not defined by instability. We are defined by construction. The Mfandankua Dam is as much a statement as it is a structure. But that raises the deeper question. What does it mean for the people who have lived in darkness for decades? In Mozambique, where whole districts still end their days by candlelight, electricity is not an abstraction. It is survival. A single bulb in a classroom stretches lessons past sunset. A powered water pump means women no longer walk miles for water. A refrigerator in a village shop transforms what can be sold, stored, and saved. Small entrepreneurs in Maputo's outskirts, once forced to shut their stalls at dusk, can now sell into the night. Vendors keep fish, fruit, and bread fresh longer, multiplying income in small but crucial ways. These overlooked microeconomies prove that electricity is not just a number in a government ledger. It is daily wealth, measured in school fees paid, meals secured, and families sustained. Culturally, the shift is profound. For generations, rural families gathered around firelight for warmth and security. Now, power poles rise in villages and the night itself is redefined. Children study under electric lamps. Radios broadcast music and debates. Communities plug into a wider world that once seemed impossibly distant. Health outcomes transform too. Refrigerated vaccines, stable electricity in clinics, and lit maternity wards mean the difference between life and death. For families who finally see their children grow up healthy because medicine is properly stored, electricity is healthcare itself. Trade and transport follow the current. Mechanics, welders, and small manufacturers can finally run the equipment that was once out of reach. Farmers preserve their harvests. Traders move goods that don't spoil before reaching the market. This is why electricity is more than wires, it is confidence. The confidence to invest, to plan, to imagine a future without collapse. The dignity of electricity cannot be overstated. For decades, Africa's story has been one of scarcity. Yet the arrival of electricity reveals another truth. The continent has never lacked talent or resilience. It has only been denied the tools to unleash them. And Mozambique has set itself a bold target. By 2030, every one of its 33 million citizens will have access to electricity on paper. This may look like an extension of recent gains. The country more than doubled electricity access in 6 years, climbing from 31% in 2018 to 60% in 2024. But the closer you look, the clearer it becomes. This is not routine development. It is a race against geography, history, and time. Mozambique stretches across 800,000 square kilometers, much of it remote. Building transmission lines into these areas is costly and logistically daunting. That is why universal access cannot rely on the national grid alone. Enter the dual strategy: megadams like Mfandankua on one hand, and decentralized off-grid solutions on the other. In 2024 alone, Electricidade de Moçambique connected more than 500,000 households. Meanwhile, solar mini-grids and home systems already account for about 10% of electricity access, and that share is set to rise sharply. Mozambique's future is not one network, but many layered, resilient, and adaptive. But the threats are real. Cyclones hammer the coast almost yearly, ripping down infrastructure. Insurgents in the north have shown how fragile megaprojects can be. Universal access demands not only technical ambition but political stability and adaptive design. Every year without progress is another year lost for children studying by candlelight, for clinics without refrigeration, for entrepreneurs limited by darkness. This is why electrification has become more than a policy. It is a national identity project. No Mozambican, however remote, should feel left behind in the nation's rise. And Mozambique is not alone in this continental race. Across Africa, rivers are being dammed, panels installed, grids extended. From Ethiopia's Grand Renaissance Dam on the Nile to the long-anticipated Inga III project in the Congo, Africa is betting on water to power sovereignty. Ethiopia has already shifted regional politics with its defiance of Egypt. The DRC holds hydropower potential capable of powering much of the continent. And Mozambique, with its new dam, now stands in the same arena. History adds weight. The Cahora Bassa Dam was built under Portuguese colonial rule, and its power once flowed south to apartheid South Africa, while rural Mozambicans remained in darkness. That insult has never been forgotten. Mfandankua is the reversal of that story, power not for colonial industries, but for Africa's own networks. And yet, every African megadam brings tension. Who really controls the profits, the risks, the terms? When Ethiopia built its dam, it faced diplomatic war. Congo's Inga III has long raised alarms about foreign exploitation. Mozambique faces the same question. Can Africa build rivers for Africans? Financing is the wall every nation hits. Dams are built with concrete and steel, but they are financed with debt. Mozambique already carries nearly $17 billion in liabilities. So when the announcement was made, celebration was quickly shadowed by doubt. Is this leap forward or another trap? The World Bank is not writing a blank check. Instead, it is providing risk insurance, oversight funding, and guarantees. The billions will come from a consortium of firms like Total Energies and EDF. Critics warn this looks like dependency, but Mozambique is not passively accepting aid. It is negotiating with giants, making them stakeholders in its national vision. That distinction matters. Of course, risks remain. Transmission lines must be built. Environmental safeguards must hold. Debt repayments must not strangle the economy. Africa has seen white elephant projects before. Mozambique cannot afford another. But the greater risk is inaction. To remain dependent on imported fuels, to limp forward in blackout after blackout, that is the true recipe for permanent dependency. By daring to gamble on Mfandankua, Mozambique has chosen risk over stagnation. It has chosen sovereignty over waiting. The barber who plans to buy new clippers, the farmer who dreams of cold storage, the student who imagines studying without a candle, These are the real shareholders of the dam. Yes, the project carries the fingerprints of global financiers, but it also carries the unmistakable stamp of African ambition. Mozambique is not bowing to dependency, it is confronting poverty, confronting the old order that told Africa to wait its turn. The price of power is steep, but the cost of remaining powerless is far higher. That is why this dam will be remembered not just as another megaproject, but as a declaration. Mozambique and Africa itself betting on their own strength no matter the odds. Because if Africa does not build its own power, who will?